Hello, welcome back to my channel. So today I just wanted to do a really quick reading week wrap up showing what I have read this week. I haven't read as many books this week as I typically do. I ended up spending a little bit more time on one particular book. So I have three books, or two books that I've read this week, and then a third book that I started earlier this morning that then I'll be reading through the weekend. So the main book from this week was The Remarkable Education of John Quincy Adams by Phyllis Levin. And this was fantastic. I really enjoyed this. I showed this in my last reading update, and I had said that I was going to plan on reading it just through the weekend and then picking up something else. That ended up not happening. I decided to take a lot more time with this book than I typically do. I really slowed down my reading pace and tried to soak up as much of its content as I could. And I'm really glad I did that. I think that it was a very rewarding reading experience, forcing myself to slow down and really soak everything in. So I ended up taking about a week to read this one. I think it's about 6 days on my Goodreads time tracker feature on there. But I really enjoyed it. This is my first full biography to read on John Quincy Adams. I have read a couple other books about the Adams family as a whole. I've read a biography of Abigail Adams, of Louisa Adams, the wife of John Quincy Adams. I have read David McCullough's biography of John Adams, but I haven't read anything about John Quincy Adams until this book. And so I thought that it was a really great starting point, a good sort of overarching biography for someone like myself who didn't know a whole lot about John Quincy Adams aside from sort of what I picked up reading books about his family or books about the time period in which he was such a key player. And so I really enjoyed it. Phyllis Levin leans very heavily on John Quincy Adams' original writing, which is a fantastic thing to do as a historian because John Quincy Adams had an incredible amount of writings, both letters and correspondence, as well as private journal entries and diaries and that sort of thing. And so there's a lot of written material that he left behind to be used. And Levin certainly uses all of it. There were times when I felt that I was craving a little bit more interpretation and a little bit more of Levin's scholarship and a little less of the original source documents, which I don't always feel that. A lot of times I think that the source documents are fantastic and I want to be able to read them. But I felt that at times throughout this book, there was too much of the original documentation and not enough summation or not enough explanation as to the context of certain references that John Quincy would make in his diaries or references he would make in his letters. But for the most part, I felt that it was balanced very well. I did learn a whole lot that I didn't know before, and I enjoyed the structure as well. It really focuses on his early years, his very forming years for him, which also were some of his most active years as well, and most of his time being spent overseas in Europe. And then the book ends with his final appointment as a minister to Russia under President Monroe in 1809. And so it does not go into any detail about his presidency or any of his time working in the capital after his presidency. There is a little bit of an afterword where that is covered, but it's really more just given a nod to, and the book itself is focusing much more on his earlier years. However, that does not mean it's a short book. It's close to 700 pages, and so that's one of the reasons that it took me a little bit longer, was because it was a little bit more detailed, being focused just on sort of that first portion of his life. And then I don't want to say it's dense, but it's quite thick, but in a good way. And so it was a good book to slow down on, and I did really enjoy it. And I am glad, sort of in retrospect, that I decided to take my time with it. So I finished that one yesterday evening, and then I read I'm sorry. At the beginning, I said I only finished one book. It was 2 books. Then I read, let me see if I can get this to come up here. My Kindle is acting slow. Then I read George Washington, The Wonder of the Age by John Rhodehamel. I hope I'm saying his last name correctly. And this is the one that I finished yesterday evening. So I have my dates one day too far. So I finished The Remarkable Education of John Quincy Adams Wednesday night. Then I finished this last evening, which was Thursday night. And I really enjoyed this. So this is a very quick biography, very quick book. It's under 300 pages. That really is a great analysis of Washington's military career, as well as some of his business dealings before he entered into a leadership position with the Continental Army. It does not go into a whole lot of detail of Washington's presidency or his last years, but for sort of a brief overview of his military career and a great summary of the American Revolution, this was absolutely fantastic, and I really, really enjoyed it. Again, it's a very quick read. I read it in a day and a half. It's just under 300 pages, so it's not a long read at all. It's very engaging. It's very quick, very quickly paced as well, so it keeps you interested. And then the book that I'm currently reading and that I will be reading hopefully until tomorrow evening, I'm hoping it doesn't take me too long, is His Excellency George Washington by Joseph J. Ellis, another Washington biography. I've started this one. I think about 15 pages in, so I've only read just a couple minutes on it. Haven't really dived into it at all. It's another shorter one. It's just a little, I think it's just a little bit over 300 pages, so pretty comparable to the other Washington biography. This one, I'm not sure yet, sort of the angle that the author is taking, because I am so early on. I'm only about 15 pages in, so I just finished up the introduction, sort of Ellis's setting of the stage for Washington's life. So I'm very interested in this one to sort of see the approach that Ellis will take. So I will make a video about this one either when I finish it or next week in my weekly wrap up. But I'll be reading this one over the weekend. Then I'm not quite sure what my reading will be on Monday. Probably something short, just because I don't want to start any book too long, because I want to be able to have November 1st to start on both my buddy read of Emma with Ann Novella, and to be able to start in on my nonfiction November TBR, which is different from some of this other nonfiction that I've been reading. So I want to leave some of my reading channels open. So I will probably just read this one, and then maybe some short stories on Monday, and then being able to start it on Tuesday fresh into my nonfiction November TBR. Also this week, the group read that I was doing with Steve Donahue and Mark at Book Time with Elvis for Dracula has been concluded. We are now trying to figure out what we want to do sort of to wrap up the reading. We may be doing sort of a live stream situation. We're not quite sure yet. So hopefully that will be solidified this next week, and then hopefully next week we will see something coming up for that. So that's it for today. Just wanted a really quick, very chatty reading wrap up. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any comments you'd like to leave down below, please feel free to do so, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.